because they enjoy experiencing the physical world. They have a hard time, I think, in most cases, maintaining it. Talked about Malachi Martin before, but he has a really interesting book, Hostage to the Devil. He was the main exorcist for the Catholic Church for something like 30 years.
I think I have that book on myself.
It's pretty scary, but in most cases what he says, and I think he very over-sensationalizes this kind of stuff in a way that he describes what I would call astral phenomena as if it was literally happening. And it's like, well, I know what you mean, and I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to scare people essentially into Jesus. But although he had claimed that he felt that the Jesuit order of the Catholic Church was the only one who hadn't been contaminated by these spirits. And that in itself is interesting to think about because, well, this is an interesting concept. It was in the 70s, I think, the Catholic Church went from having 2 exorcists, which they had for years and years and years and years and years, to having something like over 300. Where all of a sudden there was this need for this. And that is completely coharmonious with occult literature becoming more widespread and people having greater access to it. And I think part of the reason you would only see it in the church before is because the Vatican has the biggest collection of occult books in the world. Like, they have tons of shit that we've never even seen, and it's all under lock and key, and you have to be above archbishop level to even get in that room. So those guys were the only ones with access to that, with open access to that material at that point in time for a long time.
Do you think there was, when they revised the whole exorcism ritual, that was just recent,
yeah, it's very recent.
I can't remember when it was, I think in the 80s or 90s or something, but what do you think was happening on a spiritual level,
I just think that
the
people,
demonic entities?
yeah, people now had more widespread access to stuff like that. And that shit just jumped off big time in the 90s. I'm pretty sure most of us know Hermetic.com, right? We're familiar with this website. Just having that come on the scene, this was how I got my start in ceremonial magic, simply because I grew up in a place where I would have to drive for 8 hours to get a Crowley book. That shit was not available in New Brunswick at all. But we had the internet, so all of a sudden I could check all this stuff out. And that's something that if you talk to older members of the occult community, that's one of the big things they focus on, is suddenly now everyone has just free access to this stuff. When you think about guys like Levy and Crowley going blind in libraries, poring over books for days at a time to try and find one piece of information that they needed, whereas we can just type something into a search string and it's there. We have access to this material at a completely unprecedented level, and I think it is logical to assume that means that the spiritual world is getting more access to us, but in turn.
So how do you know someone is possessed, or how do you know they're possessed? Is it going to be The Exorcist, or you're
I've never seen anything like that. No.
So how do you,
I would. It's been very difficult because that's a hard judgment to make about someone else. That's a very difficult judgment to make. I would.
Because there's just this one person, and every time I'm around him, I smell just sulfur.
Well,
maybe he just needs to take a shower. It's kind of creepy. He wanders around the residence building a lot.
I would say very sudden changes in behavior.
My cousin, she was when 8 years old. She was possessed.
Yeah.
It happens at a certain time of the day that she would start talking about some stuff that is beyond her age.
Yeah, that's a good sign. If someone, and I talked about memory lapses before. We can see that a lot. I was telling you guys, I showed up after I told this story, so I'll tell it again. I was working up to a demonic working very recently, about 2 months ago, and was out just at a bar with a friend, and paid my tab, getting ready to go. This girl comes up to me. She's all flirty or whatever. She's like, "Oh, I recognize from YouTube and stuff," and just seemed really nice. What's that?
You have a YouTube channel?
Oh yeah. It's kind of a mashup of poetry, lectures, and stand-up comedy, but still.
What's the? Anyways, I'll ask you.
Okay. I went to write down my info because it looked like she wanted to hang out or whatever, and in the middle of the conversation, she flipped out, started choking me, digging her nails into my neck, screaming that I was a false prophet and the Antichrist. Literally, this this was a little chick, tiny little hands, tiny little wrists. I could not move her hands from my neck. They were like iron bars. Then, all of a sudden, this lasted for maybe 15 seconds, she just snapped, ran out of the place, curled up into a ball on the sidewalk and started crying. And I was just like, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that might be connected to the whole demon that I'm supposed to be talking to later on tonight.
Was it, so it was because of you doing certain
Yeah, I think it was, because these things have more access to people when they're mentally unbalanced and stuff like that, and they will, if they have a hostility to you, they will notice you.
How do you know whether it's possession or whether you're just psychologically ill?
Very difficult to make that call.
Is it kind of like connected, like you're possessed and you become psychologically ill, or you're psychologically ill and you're easy to become?
I, yeah, I would think that both those things are very, very true. Like, you know, if someone is having that
What do you mean
experience.
by oppression?
A lot of the things that he was saying, like when he said about having the blackout, I'm very familiar with that one myself. I was going to ask you, were you by chance having some drinks when that happened to you?
No, actually, I find that if I do long-term ritual workings, because I tend to do it consistently over a period of time, like I'll do, you know, like a few weeks. At that point, I was doing a VIII invocation that was 77 days, and I find if I'm on one of those long tears, I will I just lose all tolerance for alcohol. Like, I just get drunk really, really quickly, and so I tend to.
I found that if you get distracted, booze can open a doorway, and these things can.
Yeah.
really
Which is problematic
fast.
because.
Because it's happened to me. I had channels where I didn't want to, and people would say afterwards, "You said this and this and this," and it was obvious that I was out there, and I didn't remember hardly anything. It was all fuzzy. But then it jumped to a friend. One time we were sitting around drinking, and we got pretty bombed. All of a sudden, he started like babbling, and I recognized that from someone else, and I knew that it had jumped. And I told him, I said, listen, okay, I used to drink a lot back then, and I could kind of get a handle on things, but I had to stop. He had the same exact problem, and I told him, I said, you're gonna have to tone down your drinking, because you're opening the doorway there, and when you lose that control, it can slip in. And not long after that, he went on another binge, like a bad bender. He went down to Mexico and started in with some of the worms and all that kind of stuff. And he came back and he had panic attacks so bad that he had to go to the hospital because he thought he was having a heart attack. So
that just sounds like alcoholism.
Yeah, kind of.
I used to drink a lot, and it's like, yeah, I used to drink a lot, and then like punch my friend in the head, and then wake up in the morning and be like, whoa, I did that? That's weird. I don't think that's demonic possession. I think that's
yeah, but he was talking in language. He was talking in languages he didn't know.
Okay, well that shit's weird. But just doing bad stuff and having panic attacks is like just a sign of drinking.
And I think that can become problematic too, because it's true. Spirits like spirits. They do.
I stopped smoking weed
like
because
alcohol.
I was getting too much. I could open doors, and so I ended up going to a witch, and we did a seal because I was getting too much. It was too strong.
The last time
It can be a
drank,
trigger. Like, one of my friends in California is a great scryer, but like she just can't work sober, so that like, it just doesn't work for her.
Interesting. Yeah, I had a huge memory lapse. One of the last times I was drinking, I wasn't drinking that much. I was sitting at the bar drinking shots, and the next thing I knew I was in my bed waking up in the morning and didn't even feel hungover. I could not remember at all